many of you have been bullied in your life at some point or the other? Can I have a show of hands? That's a fair number. Thank you for sharing. Did you know that we can reduce the number of instances of bullying and actually work towards ending it with changing the way we educate our children? My name is Kirthi Jayakumar, and I'm going to talk to you about bullying and how we can effectively address bullying through peace education. Now, a year and a half ago, I was invited to teach a bunch of children of grade 4 a choreographed dance sequence as part of their annual day program. And these children were a motley bunch. You had every kind: the noisy ones, the quiet ones, the chatterboxes, the mischief mongers, the ones that love to read in a corner. And for some reason I still haven't figured out, almost all of them loved picking their nose. Now, I did something when I was handling these children that I'm still guilty about, and I tended to gravitate towards the few that I assumed had the energy to carry the dance forward. And so in the process, I ignored this tiny slip of a girl who almost always stood at the back of the class. She was petite, had a small frame, had glistening eyes, oily hair, and little okra seeds for teeth. She was a wallflower, if you will. Now, on the last day, after all our rehearsals had gotten done, I was sitting with the children, taking them through a few rules that they had to remember before going on stage. And in the corner of my eye, I noticed a boy jostling this little girl, and in seconds, she fell down. Almost immediately, a teacher swooped in from a corner, pulled the boy aside, and asked him if he remembered her warning, her telling him not to do this again, which meant this had happened before. I drew the girl aside. We sat down together on a staircase, and the both of us weren't communicating with words, but a lot was said in silence. I asked her if she was okay. She nodded. I asked if she wanted water. She shook her head. And we sat together for all of 4 minutes, and in the 4th minute, when she got up to leave, I finally asked her the question that had been niggling at the bottom of my throat. Does this happen to you every day? She turned around, looked at me, and held my gaze for all of a few seconds, and nodded almost imperceptibly. And in that second, my heart sank. As I watched her go back to class, I felt a sense of guilt grip me. How could I let her go back into an environment where she would be subjected to bullying, violence, and a constant messaging that would tell her she was unworthy? When I went back home that day, I went back with a sense of dread, a sense of disheartenment, if you will. Not only for what I had seen that happened to the girl, but also because she set me back to when I was a child of her age, through my childhood, as a high schooler, as a college student, bullied in one way or the other. And she also made me think in the way that children make you think. And there were so many questions in my mind. We have an education system that is so busy making economy-worthy individuals who can add to the coffers of the world. But how many of them are humane? How many of them have a sense of empathy? So what if when we teach our children geography, if we could walk the extra mile and teach them that the world's many ethnicities are equal and none is inferior or superior to the other? What if when we teach our children history, we stop a moment and tell them that the words "never again" were actually uttered for a reason? What if when we're teaching our children the rules of grammar, syntax, communication, English, and whatever other language, we also slipped in a little lesson on nonviolent communication and taught them the art of empathetic communication? What if when we teach our children the humanities, sociology, anthropology, psychology, whatever, we also taught them the value of Ubuntu? I am who I am because of who we are together. I spent a lot of time doing my own research. I had seen a problem. I didn't want to be part of the problem. I wanted to be part of the solution. With all the research that I could find, I put together a curriculum of my own. One woman, one laptop, one big, audacious dream. I wanted to end bullying. I didn't have access to the same children that I taught dance to for various reasons. But I picked the brain of a friend who often talked to me about a class she taught where bullying was a problem, particularly between a boy and a girl. So 2 weeks later, I found myself with my rudimentary curriculum in hand, smack center with 20 children around me, said bully and bullied in tow. Now we talked together. We talked about themes of nonviolent communication, of diversity, of mutual respect, of tolerance, of just being equalists. And children are also very smart. They know how to tell you exactly what you want to hear. And so I decided to be one step smarter. I decided that I would do a dip check and get the children to share their stories. And I touched a raw nerve when I brought the word bully up. Through the entire session, the girl that was bullied remained quiet. But when I asked them if anybody wanted to share a story, she was the first one to put her hand up. And so I welcomed her to the center of the class. And please bear in mind that she was incredibly quiet. But this moment was hers. She looked at everybody in the eye and started sharing her story. She told everybody that she was from a broken home. Her father was an incredibly violent man. He would beat her mother. And to save her mother, this little girl would find a way to force herself between them, sometimes being brutally beaten, shoved aside, pushed. And between dressing with full-sleeve clothes and showing up in school and staying quiet because processing all this was incredibly tough, she became a victim of her own silence, and very easily the victim of bullying. And she didn't stop there. She spoke to the bully straight on and said, "When you do this to me, you put me in a terrible situation." Now, somewhere in the middle of this narration, her eyes had welled up, but by the end of it, she was sobbing. And through my own water curtain of tears, when I looked up at her, I also noticed from the corner of my eye, the boy that bullied her had gotten out of his seat. He took great strides towards her, and he gave her a hug. I let the two of them remain in that space just to share that moment, and when they broke, the boy asked me if he could share something. Now, with the consent of the girl, to ensure that she'd finished saying what she had to say, I asked the boy to begin. And he said something that shocked me. He said he was going through the exact same thing. He was from a broken home. His father was incredibly violent. He would beat his mother. And this boy, to save his mother, would put himself in between the two of them, sometimes being beaten, shoved, and pushed. But the difference here was that this boy had realized something had been taken away from him with his father's violent ways, and he decided to don the same cape to take back what he had lost. In that session, 21 lives changed. The bully and the bullied became the best of friends, and today pay forward with the learning they gained to the very children of the same age that they were at when they had the realization. 18 other children understood how Sonder plays out in real life, that every face, every name has a story behind it, and you walk the extra mile to be compassionate about that. And the 21st person, she started with one dream, and she has one story to share with you today. I went back home with all of these ideas, mulling over it, thinking about ways to operationalize this. And that night with my team at the Red Elephant Foundation, ChalkPeace was born. We called it ChalkPeace because we wanted to be peace educators. And the image of chalk almost automatically conjures up all things teaching. But the difference was that we were not going to teach. We were not in any way going to be the ones standing to maneuver a workshop. We were going to co-facilitate, co-learn, walk the extra mile with the students we were with, and learn along with them. So with my curriculum, we got to do a bunch of programs across different schools, different programs, different initiatives. And in each of them, one of the most common themes that we understood was that many of the children wanted to have a means to stay engaged. So that led us to develop our curriculums in the form of little books, ebooks, handouts, infographics that the children could come back on our website and access. And that gave birth to a series of different ideas that have now found their way onto our website. But while we did these workshops, we also recognized that many of these children were coming from homes that tended to reiterate the exact opposite of what we taught them. And so it became incredibly important to welcome the parents and the teachers and every other sphere of influence that the children were engaged with. And so began a new series of reinvented curriculums that engaged a wider demographic. And then came a point in the entire journey when we realized that ChalkPeace can actually make a difference. Out of the 1,000 children that we've worked with, we've been able to change over 600 lives that actually reported to us. Out of the remaining 400, there could be some that we've changed, there may not, but 600 is a good number to go with. When I think of ChalkPeace and the numbers that we've been able to convert, I can't tell you that we've been successful enough in changing the world. We're getting there. But it only makes me think of this one beautiful story that I grew up learning, and I call it the starfish story. There was this man who was walking on the seashore, and he found starfish being washed ashore by the waves. He would pick one up, throw it back into the water, and kept doing it for the entire time that he walked on the shore. Another man who was watching him walked up to him and said, "What are you doing? It's not going to make a difference." This man picked up one more starfish, threw it in the water, looked the man in the eye and said, "It makes a difference to this one." Thank you.